Let's just move you down. Stay. What's up, troop? In today's video, I want to go over the workflow I've been using more recently with my music creation. It shouldn't work and it doesn't make sense, but it's working really, really well, and I'm getting a lot of flow out of it. I'm getting like a load of creativity. I'm finishing up music really consistently with it. Then, because I pay a yearly fee with DistroKid, which gives me unlimited music distribution, I can put all of those out as singles or release beat tapes and mixes as and when I want. More info about what DistroKid offers you for that package linked above and below. So I wanted to share it because it might be something that helps you out, and well, that's what we're here for, right? So let me go over the workflow. Basically, if I'm doing some kind of like beat production, and this is where this has really come in, but it could work with any kind of music production element that you're going into. If I'm working on, say, the MPC, the machine, or even here in Logic, instead of trying to create a track as it is, the whole big workflow of, you know, I've built an intro and we've got the drop and here's a little bridge section and here's the big uplifting bit. I've just been working in loops and sections and just keeping them in their own kind of compartment. See, when you work on a machine or you work on MPC, you build stuff in sequences and scenes, so you can then jump between those for kind of like live performance and sequencing out your idea when you record it. But instead of doing that, I'm just working like within those 8, 4, 1, 16 bars and just doing whatever kind of creative idea that comes to mind, instead of trying to make it fit in with another section and move into another section. Does that make sense? So for example, this beat here has all these different sequences where I've just had ideas and had some kind of vibe that I wanted to create. So I've created it within its own little contained compartment in those 8 bars. And then I like that idea. Great, I'm going to create something else in these little 8 bars. We're using the same sounds, the same samples, the same key, but it's its own contained little thing. In those own little sections and compartments, especially on, say, the machine or the MPC, I'm getting them to sound as good as I possibly can in that kind of department or compartment or sequence or section, whatever you want to phrase it as, right? And I mean, I'm doing all the automation in there. I'm mixing it and balancing it down as best as I can. On the MPC, for example, instead of tracking everything out into individual elements, I'm using like the drum group and the filters as EQs and just getting everything dialed in as much as possible. And then here's the bit that's going to really flip you out. I'm committing to those sections. So instead of, say, tracking everything out and having stems to then mix and work with, I'm bouncing out those chunks, those sections, the drums, the hi-hats, if there's a bass line in there, the chopped samples, all in those individual elements. In Logic, I'm taking those chunks and bouncing them down to audio, if that's the case as well. And then I'm taking all of those different parts and treating them like samples in an arrangement. So for example, if there's an 8-bar section that actually I really like and I want that to become the 16-bar main verse, I'll take that chunk, loop it and make that the 16-bar verse. There might be like a little sample flip that I did at the end of an 8-bar section that I really like that goes with the intro. So I'm cutting that out and putting that in before we drop into the 16, and then using a bit of the sample that ran in where I just done the chops up into the intro and building out the whole track like that. And because I'm committed to having something that already sounds as good as I could get it, there's no tweaking, there's no messing about, there's no, I might just make that violin just a little bit louder. None of that. It's there, I cut it and I've printed the track. But obviously things do happen and I kind of listen and I was like, actually, do you know what? I would really have liked a shaker on the second 8-bar section there. And that's when I can start adding those extra things. But because I'm just adding those elements and making those small adjustments to what's already printed, it's super quick. I don't end up messing around for hours. I can like drop the shaker in, get the timing right, get a bit of swing in, boom, we go 8 bars, next 8 bars, which is just a copy that I already did from before, bring the shaker in, and then maybe, all right, we need a bit of transition. And the other thing is, when you're building a track together like this, it can be really difficult to like get the transitions and different sections to all flow together. But doing it this way, when those moments happen, it's like, cool, I can build a nice riser up in here in this track and move it into this section. I can snap these 2 bits together and just add a little crossfade here. And now this section moves really simply into this bit. I'm going to show you on the screen now. the beat that I was working on today when I thought, actually, do you know what? I should share this like kind of workflow with you lot, because there are sections in it and ideas where I went completely off of what the original concept was, but I've used it right in the middle of the track. And I've used 1-bar loops, there's a couple of 2-bar loops, there's something where I flip the sample in a completely different way. But I've used that in a nice bridge section in the middle, whereas before it never would have worked in the sequence. And then I've taken other parts of the sample and sequence from the intro and used that to make transitional pieces. So it all works together. We've then added shakers, some rides, some claps, and a couple of other little transition parts. To make it a completely finished track. If I had tracked out all of these individual parts and given myself the, I don't know, probably 16 to 24 channels to work with, and then started adding this stuff and then mixing all those elements down again, I would not be recording this video right now. I would be spending another 4 to 6 hours working on this track. When this sounds great, it is finished, it is all put together. So that is the workflow. I've been just creating and coming up with ideas and loops and sections, but instead of trying to always like jam them together, just letting them be their own thing, making 10, 15, 20 of them, tracking them out into Logic, recording them in from MPC, machine, or bouncing them as audio in Logic and dragging them into another session so you're not tempted to mess around with them, and then building the track out from there has just massively exacerbated my workflow. It allows me to stay really creative and do the kind of weird ideas like you can hear in the middle of this track that I probably would have binned off otherwise, like, oh, there's no way I can fit that in. But actually, when I've arranged the track in a different way, in a format where I'm basically treating it as a bunch of like short loops that I want to cobble together into a track, which is working really, really well, it gives you that element to keep through those creative nuance bits and go, actually, I really liked that like ramp up bit that I did, but I don't like the way it drops into the hook. Instead, I want that to be the end of the intro and drop into the main verse. You can just do it this way without having to cut apart and break apart your track. You've got all those elements individualized, they're working, the creative part that you really liked is there, and you, because you contained it in that one element, it works for you in your creative way. And yeah, it's just a really great workflow that's working for me. I don't know if you want to try it, if you're stuck in like a loop, or you keep like adjusting your mix and tweaking things all the time, it can be really, really good. Just get one section sounding really, really good, and then you can kind of duplicate that over. Once you print it to audio, you're committed to it. And you might hear little things you want to change or transitions you want to make into those different sections, but you can add those afterwards and you don't end up bogging yourself down in the overall mix. I hope that's been helpful for you. I hope it's a good idea and helps somebody out. That's all I ever really want to share with this. So guys, thank you very much for watching. I do look forward to seeing you in future videos. Take care. Got the reverse problem with the mic arm. Instead of it dropping down, it now does this.